Hello and welcome to Gaming Buzz. I'm Jacob and I'm here with a very special interview today. I'm here with Troy Frisque. Hi, Troy.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
So we arranged an interview because Troy here is a rather important player in our local video game scene. You're what would you call yourself? The owner, the manager of GBLAN?
So I would call myself the manager of GBLAN. The ownership of that is technically owned by an individual who goes by Sandrock. He is living the dream as far as family life right now is concerned. So I'm the original founder of GBLAN, and he is available whenever he needs to kick in. And then I'm also the head organizer of King of 94 Wisconsin.
King of 94 Wisconsin. That's a video game tournament where you play what?
NHL 94 for the Sega Genesis.
Now, when I first found out about this event, this is your first year doing this tournament, right?
That's correct.
And when I first found out about it, I found out about it through Facebook on one of your Facebook pages, the actual event page. And the first question I asked myself was, why that particular game?
So if we go back in time a little bit, we went on a LAN party hiatus. We had lost a venue that we were running events at. And I stumbled across a video put on by NFL Films, and this was related to a Tecmo Super Bowl tournament that takes place every year in Madison, Wisconsin. It's known as Tecmo Madison. It's the largest of its type. And I was just blown away that they had hundreds of people playing a game from 1991. I loved the game. I thought I was kind of nerdy for just playing it, and if a buddy would come over, we would try it out or whatever, and you're always fighting for who gets to be Bo or Joe Montana. And through that discovery process, we decided that we tried putting on a retro. We never tried that. We did some, like name emulation and things like that, but going back and, and actually having let's do this on real consoles. So I went through, bought all these Nintendos, got them all cleaned up, real controllers, real CRT televisions. My wife hates me right now. I've got CRT televisions all over my garage right now.
I know the feeling.
But you learn in the process that on a monitor there's some input lag in the emulation, and that affects things like field goals and kicking meters. And so I started that process, and along the way I got lined up with the organizer of Tecmo Milwaukee. So I help him run his tournaments. I provide a good number of the consoles. I run his live stream on Twitch for him. And then, just kind of along that journey, NHL 94 kept popping up. And it was a game that I'd played, actually, of all places, on the PC. It wasn't called NHL 94. It was called NHL Hockey. A little bit of a different presentation, but, better visually because you're playing on a analog VGA monitor versus, old composite or RF TV. So we learned that kept coming up, and so I dug around, because there are a lot of people running Tecmo tournaments in our area, and the Midwest has a lot of them. Even in our own backyard, we've got a great tournament run by Nate Smithson. He runs the Tundra Bowl, goes by Tundra or Retro Nate. He's actually having a tournament this winter. But that game kept coming up, NHL 94. So I reached out to, after searching on Google, the first thing that came up when you search for NHL 94 tournament is the King of 94 website, which is based on a tournament series that runs out of Toronto, Canada. It's kind of like their Tecmo Madison, if you will, for NHL 94. They actually run two different systems. They run the Super Nintendo, and they run the Genesis versions, which are developed by two different companies. I reached out to them and I said, how are you guys doing this? Because I've got a lot of interest. I think to differentiate here, I'm gonna move in this direction. I love the game, wasn't fantastic at it, but I said, you know what? People keep asking for it. I'm in a position where I can make this happen. Let's do it. So I did all the research as far as the rule sets, the right systems to get, and looking at what the secondhand market is on Genesis and Super Nintendo consoles, and the consensus in this market was that the Genesis was the superior version. Everything is always subjective, of course, but that was the general opinion. I was also in that opinion. I've played both. I prefer the Genesis. So I said, if I'm going to do all the work, I'm going to play the version I want, because I just can't afford, both ends of it.
Did you decide to get the Genesis version and use that over the Super Nintendo version because it had blast processing?
It wasn't the blast processing. True story. I was not a Genesis owner in my teenage years. I owned a Super Nintendo and I had a DOS-based PC, and that's where most of my gaming took place. It was only when I played the game on at friends' houses where they had the Genesis that it just felt a little better. And there's a technical explanation why it's better. It has to do with the speed of that particular processor and the sprite generation. And I don't want to say something that's inaccurate, but it's something along those lines with the layering that it's smoother and it looks better. If you look at the Genesis version, it's a little stale looking, for lack of a better term. The audio is definitely better on the Genesis, and we'll give it that. As far as the digitized soundboard was better on that. On the Super Nintendo, that was the better. But the actual gameplay, which is what really everyone cares about in something like this, Genesis all the way.
Yeah, that's really interesting because there are a lot of sports games I've played from that era, but I don't think I've ever actually played something on Genesis besides like NBA Jam. Everything else I played on Super Nintendo, so maybe I've been missing out on the good stuff, huh?
And if you had to say, comparing the two, it's like 1 and 1A. The Super Nintendo versions are not bad; they're just not as good.
I think that's a good distinction. So you'd rather run a tournament with the superior version.
Correct. And we're not ruling out the possibility of ever, if this grows and there are people like, oh man, we really played the Super Nintendo version, especially if we have a lot of the Canadian following that's like, we want to you involve this and then we'll come down. I'll strongly consider it. It's a cost matter. By the time you get, we're hunting down all this, you usually got $100 or more buried in one setup. I can buy 3 setups for the Genesis. So that's really the main barrier there.
I see. Do you have any other challenges then with like getting all the equipment you need and whatnot? Because how many systems are you planning on running for this?
So we're still working out some of the power grid, but as far as we have all the space we need, we have the entire mezzanine over at Town Line in Swamico there, the old upper room there. That's all ours to work with. So we have more space than we're going to be utilizing for that. From a staff standpoint, we're bringing 10 systems. I'm bringing additional CRT televisions for individuals. We offered a little bit of a discount for anyone that wanted to bring a system. That discount's no longer available because we have more than we need at this point. They're essentially backup consoles. But we wanted to kind of get that out there in the beginning, so as this grows, we know that I don't necessarily have to go and spend another large chunk of money on another 10 consoles. We can get individuals to kind of
help out.
Correct. Because at some point, I'll be overwhelmed with all of this. So we definitely just trying to lay the groundwork early where we have enough help. We have a mutual friend and Nick Wattier, who's going to actually help me snap a few shots during the event, capture some memories for us.
Shout out to Nick.
Right. We have guys that have just, they knocking on the doors, as it were. They come on my regular nights to help, test out my stream. Tim Ubik, Troy Evers, Levi Lacrosse, all super guys. Levi's another audio guy. He works for a local news station here in town. He's actually trying to get us some coverage for the event during the day of. And the guys from NHL94.com, if I follow up any of these podcasts, if I misspoke, they just let me know, hey, you're close. This is how it actually is. So I'm a student of the game. I am not a savant, but I am very good at running the tournaments. We have a lot of experience in that, and everyone has fun when we throw an event on.
Something I want to ask, and you actually just kind of brought it up. You do have some experience running tournaments, right?
Correct.
What other games have you done tournaments for?
Most notably Counter-Strike Source, probably one of the, now Global Offensive has taken over in the PC world. But we did a tournament where we actually held the entire LAN party at the KI Convention Center in 2006. and there were over 120 participants present. I want to say there was something like 8 or 10 teams, and we're going back 10 years now. So, but there was a significant cash payout for that from all the entry money that came in. We had some ringer teams that made the journey for that. We've done a lot of recently Street Fighter, and then I'm also involved with the Tecmo Milwaukee tournament, which the last one was in April. There'll be another one in November. And so I'm helping more on the technical side on that than I am. I'm not doing anything with the brackets at that point, but I'm providing hardware, spare hardware, and stream.
What are some of the big challenges with running your own tournament? Because there are plenty of people out there who are like, man, I'd love to do this. What are the pitfalls?
So first off, you have to be dumb enough to spend, $1,000 or more just on equipment. You got to be crazy enough. You got to love it enough to do that. Once you've done that, the second difficult thing is to get people to come. The marketing. Actually running them is not terribly difficult if you understand the rules. Because you can do a lot of the work ahead of time. There's applications like Challenge that do tournament brackets for you. You don't have to get the big board. Some people still like to do that. I like to do it digitally because that information for later tracking is already stored. It's easily shared with anyone who can't be there, because we usually do have a decent Twitch following that will tune into things like this. When we did the Milwaukee tournament, we had I think over 50 viewers at one point, which is a lot for our community when you understand that half of the community was at that tournament. So unless you're just kind of stumbling onto it, that was pretty big. So working with the venue is the other, making sure that you have everything, the communication there, getting them to do their part, and then making sure the things are as setting that expectation. The other is to try to not completely destroy relationships by asking for favors to get the help that you need to get it done.
As my main job is being here doing this, and people are like, oh, it's so cool. You run a podcast and you guys do this and you do this. People do not believe that my job is like 90% marketing, 10% being on camera and talking to people. And I'm sure you can relate with that. It's a lot of marketing. Do you have any of those marketing tips for people looking to promote their tournaments or their maybe game channels or their Twitch streams?
So the Twitch stream is just something that we use to capture footage for posterity, and it's never going to be a monetization, at least not under this breath. There just isn't enough interest. But as far as getting the word out, connect with try to buy as much as you can from the local game stores in your area. Support them, steer people towards them, say so-and-so sent you, and then reach out to those individuals. They usually have a pretty decent following, because when they do a recent purchase, the Game Trades of the world, GB Games, Don Father Games, Press Starts, Mojo Games, they've all helped us. I hope I can say their names.
Oh, of course.
Okay, but they've all chipped in over the years with our events. And so that's you got to go to where the gamers are. The other thing you can do is you can look at, well, are there other things like it, other gaming tournaments? So someone who's crazy to go enough to go to travel to a tournament might be willing to do it again if they still like that particular game. So you try to connect with other organizers and say, hey, I'm doing this. Is it okay if I message your people or whatever, or do you mind sending an email out for me? Then you got to be willing to step up and do something for them as well on the flip side, and making yourself available. Doing things like this is beyond valuable, to be able to just tell our story and let the world know what we're doing, because that's really the hardest thing. Like you mentioned, you can message people all day long. When you're talking to our group, the money is usually not the concern. It's, can I get away from obligation for 4 or 5 hours? And that's usually what you're getting to. Can I get off of work? Okay, I've got children. Is the wife going to give me that blessing? Is this appropriate for what we're doing on? It isn't for everyone, but we certainly, I think those are your typical challenges.
That's some very sound information there. Do you have any stories from your tournaments? Anything really interesting you'd like to share? Maybe sometime where something went terribly wrong, or sometime where something really funny happened?
As far as terribly wrong, when you're having problems, it's typically dealing with venue challenges. We had one system that kept locking up on one particular tournament, and it turned out that there was just dirty power at that location, and that's what it was. So because it happened on multiple events where we actually had completely different equipment plugged into it, and then it would start acting up after it was just fine after somewhere else. So that's typical. You just learn to not plug into that particular outlet anymore, and you tell the venue owner this is a problem. So I don't know if that was particularly interesting, but that's the kind of challenges one would deal with kind of during the event that you got to kind of get around. By far the most, it wasn't a match that I was involved in, but I was monitoring the stream for the Tecmo Milwaukee tournament, and the guy that goes by the name of Regulator, he's a former Tecmo Madison champ, so that's considered a world champ, was there, and there was an individual from Iowa there, and the champ ended up losing, getting knocked out of the tournament on a last-minute bomb from the end zone. If you're familiar with Tecmo Bowl, you can throw it as far as the receiver is from the quarterback. There's no limitation how far you can throw it. Mm-hmm. He threw it the full 100 yards. He caught it as time expired, and and we've got video of all of it, and snapshots. Actually, if you go to the GBLAN page, that reaction shot you see, that's when that happened. So that was probably, any sort of recent memory, the most exciting thing I've ever been a part of. A guy that wasn't supposed to win that got the ball back with about 30 seconds left in the game and let it fly, and he won. And he threw it with a quarterback that had a very flat trajectory. Normally his passes get knocked down.
And he did it.
Yes.
From behind moment, one of those like one-of-a-kind things that will probably never happen again.
Well, in Tecmo, anything goes, and that's I think in video games, it's bigger than life. We thought that would happen with our Green Bay Packers this year, and they had two Hail Marys. One won the game, the other just extended it. But that's the thing at these events. There's always some memorable moment that's going to go on, and that's why we try to capture live streams. We try to put the most interesting matchups we can on that particular station so that we can capture and remember those things.
So you're involved primarily in Tecmo Bowl and NHL94. Pretty old games, as far as sports games go. For most people, it's whatever's newest. They're like, Madden 17's out. Oh, gonna drop my copy of 16. NBA 2K17's coming out. I gotta completely stop playing NBA 2K16. Why do you think those older games are still around and still like holding on to people's interest?
The might be cliche, but it's easy to learn, difficult to master. You can pick up and immediately start playing and enjoying yourself in these games where it's simple. It brings you to those arcade days where you usually have just a couple buttons. Tecmo Bowl has 2 buttons. NHL's got 3. And you use 2 of them most of the time. So you can accomplish a lot with not a lot of complexity to the control scheme. No analog sticks, no triggers, no analog triggers. You've got 2 buttons, 3 buttons at most to accomplish your objective.
So it's easy to play. Do you feel that those games are better than current titles or the same?
Well, they're certainly not simulations. They provide, a good balance of gameplay and simulations based off of the hardware that was available back in the day. But that's always been, the goal is to try to recreate the football experience. And, I've played Madden. I don't think it's unenjoyable, but there comes a point where you've got to do 12 different things before you snap the ball to have the success on a play. Sometimes you just want to sit on the couch and push a couple buttons. I think that's why a lot of games like RPGs are really popular because it's turn-based. You can think about what you're going to do, push a button and just see what happens. A lot of puzzle games, card games are very popular. You can take the time to do it without having to worry about being up against the clock, so to speak, within reason. So there's something to be said about that.
So your tournament, which is coming up very soon, when is it?
Okay, September 24th.
September 24th. Pretty close.
Yeah, just a couple weeks away.
And something I want to ask. I'll probably be attending. I think most of our team will be there. We'll all be there having fun, playing games, and meeting other members of, the gaming community. and that's one of the best parts, right?
Absolutely.
What are some tips for complete newbies like me? I've never played NHL 94. What are some tips?
First thing I would do if you don't have the game is try to find a copy. Fortunately, I've bought all of the local stock, at least recently.
Thanks.
But in a pinch, you can fire that bad boy up on Fusion or some other Genesis emulator and just get the general mechanics. I would be more than happy to share some links. There's some people on the NHL94.com forums that have made YouTube tutorials that kind of show the general bread and butter statistics. But you just got to get under the hood and start playing it.
All right, that sounds pretty good. Do you think you're going to win?
I don't think I'm going to win, although I think I stand a decent chance to potentially place out. The top three finishers are going to win prize money. So I think I put myself in the top 8 based on who I've spoken with. So I think it's anyone's game.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else you want to tell our fans out there watching this episode? Maybe thinking, oh, maybe I should do this.
Well, I think a couple of things. Folks will often get intimidated. Okay, I'm not going to win, so why would I put this money out there? And the ability to go back in time, if you ever played it, you're gonna really, because there are gonna be a lot of people that just aren't any good, but they're going because they like the game or they like gaming, they like the idea of it. So they're gonna go there, they're gonna participate, and give it the best shot. So I would say don't be discouraged if you don't think you're any good, because the first Tecmo event I played, I lost every game, and I had an absolute blast. And I thought, oh yeah, but I learned so much about it. So if you want to play that game, and the only reason you're not is because it's 20-some years old, well, I think that's the wrong reason. Also, a couple things. We are giving away an NHL 94 for the Sega CD. We'll announce how you can win this. It won't cost you any finances to win this, but one of the lucky participants will win. It's a very collectible item.
And you know what? It's interesting. There aren't very many Sega CD games out there, so it's pretty cool.
Correct. And we did buy it locally, so we patronized one of the local stores here for that. I would also suggest that if you're going to come, just let us know, because we want to try to group the brackets as fairly as possible, so you have a chance to play people close to your skill level at some point. If even that skill level is nothing, we want to try to mix it out so we don't have all of the good players in one bracket, and then there's 3 guys in that bracket that so they're gonna lose every game. We want to have everyone have a puncher's chance in the group play option. Once you get to the bracket, seeding takes over, and I can't do anything about that. But knowing what's going on ahead of time, yes, you can walk into the door and pay your $30, but we want to know if you're coming ahead of time. That's very helpful.
All right, and if people want to let you know, or they just want to get a hold of you, ask some questions or whatnot, where can they find you? Where can they get more info?
Okay, and you guys will have this in the description, hopefully.
Absolutely, okay. We will. Right down there.
So I hope I'm doing this. I'm not looking at a computer screen right now. It's facebook.com/GBNHL94. And that'll take you to our King of 94 Wisconsin page, and then the event is pinned on there.
And anything else you want to promote? Anything you want to share?
I would definitely recommend checking out the 2 Tecmo tournaments in our area, the Tecmo Milwaukee and the Tundra Bowl. Both are great tournaments run by really solid guys. That's another great example of retro sports in this area, and they also offer cash prizes, and they usually have 40 or more participants. So it's a great time. Again, held at these sports bar venues. So those particular events are adults only. The one other thing that makes us a little different, actually my son's going to be competing. He's almost 9. But we picked this venue for a reason, knowing that, so if you go into just, let's say, a bar, for instance, you got to be 21 plus, and it limits who can come. My son has been begging me to come to events. I'm like, well, you're not old enough. He's not expecting to win any games, but he wants to play and hang out with Dad, and he's not going to be in the way. He's going to try, and he knows if he's playing against someone else, he's going to get beat up on, and they're not going to take it easy on him. He's okay with that, so you got to make sure your kid's mentally able to do that.
You can pair him with me, and he'll probably win.
I'd be rooting for him. He has blood, so.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on and talking about this. What you're doing is really, really interesting. And, when I think video game tournament, this wasn't the first type of thing that came to my mind, and it's really something interesting. And, there are so many gamers out there who just sit at home and play video games on their own, and they never are a part of a community. So even those people listening who, aren't even 1,000 miles, you're 1,000 miles or more away from Green Bay, if you're in California, if you're in Beijing, China, it doesn't matter. Find your local gaming community, because community is so important, and it's one of the best parts of being into video games. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. Actually, on that note, we have a player from California coming, and Ohio. So there are players that in the Tecmo world that will travel from out of state to go to these things, because a lot of times those communities just don't exist. Which is why we picked this game, because there aren't many options for NHL94 tournaments in the States. They're out there, but they're on the far end of the coast, and they're usually bundled with something else where this is what we're doing. Now, when the people start getting eliminated, systems start freeing up, we actually have other games we'll have on hand, so people can keep free playing, and they can watch the development of the tournament, and they can leave, whatever they want to do. But we'll have that whole upstairs for pretty much the whole day, so...
Come play some games.
Absolutely. We want more the merrier.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on.
Appreciate it. Thank
you. For
you
guys, thank you for watching this interview. If you liked it, you should hit that like button. Come on. It's about something cool, interesting happening in the gaming community. Why wouldn't you give it a like? And subscribe to Gaming Buzz if you haven't done so yet, because we're Gaming Buzz and we're awesome. And leave us a comment down below. Tell us if you're thinking about attending this event. Tell us if you're thinking about starting your own retro gaming tournament, or if you've attended any of these events before and maybe, won, maybe not. Let us know. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.